When Isla Kavanagh signed the contract, she thought she was taking the safest ocean job possible. No research vessels, no deep-sea dives, no storms, just a lighthouse. Specifically, a decommissioned lighthouse 30 miles off the coast of Oregon, near where sailors still talk about the wreck of the Peter Iredale. The state had recently automated most of its remaining lights, but this one, Greywake Station, was being temporarily reactivated after several unexplained cargo ship navigation errors. The lighthouse stood alone on a jagged basalt pillar that rose from the Pacific like a broken tooth. No dock, just a narrow crane platform bolted to the rock. Isla had always preferred isolation. She was a former maritime communications officer who'd left her previous job after a distress call she couldn't trace haunted her for months. A voice repeating coordinates over and over before dissolving into static. Greywake felt simple, predictable. It wasn't. The transfer boat dropped her off just before sunset. The sea was unusually flat, reflecting a sky streaked in orange and purple. The captain avoided eye contact as she unloaded her supplies. 3 weeks, he said. Radio every 12 hours. Anything I should know? Isla asked. He hesitated. Don't answer anything you don't recognize. Then he left. The lighthouse interior was narrow but sturdy. Spiral staircase, generator room, sleeping quarters, observation deck. The lantern room at the top housed the powerful Fresnel lens. Everything smelled like salt and rust. She performed routine checks, logged generator output, tested the foghorn. At 11:42 p.m., the radio crackled. Isla frowned. No scheduled contact until morning. She picked up the receiver. Greywake Station, this is Keeper Kavanagh. Static. Then faintly. Coordinates, 44.6 north, 124.1 west. Her blood went cold. Those were Greywake's exact coordinates. Identify yourself, she demanded. The voice continued, mechanical and hollow. 44.6 north, 124.1 west. Then silence. She checked the frequency. It wasn't Coast Guard. It wasn't maritime emergency. It was coming from somewhere extremely close. Too close. The ocean changed. The Pacific is rarely still for long, but the water around Greywake became unnaturally smooth. No whitecaps, no swell. Just a dark, glassy surface stretching endlessly. Ships began avoiding the area. Through binoculars, Isla saw a cargo vessel alter course sharply, even though Greywake's light was functioning perfectly. That night, the fog rolled in thick and sudden. The foghorn activated automatically, blasting low, mournful notes across the sea. Between the blasts, Isla heard something else. Another horn. Far below. Not from a ship. From under the water. It answered Greywake's signal with a deeper, longer tone. Call and response. Her hands trembled on the railing. On the 5th morning, Isla found something floating against the rock. At first, she thought it was debris. It wasn't. It was a man in a life vest. She lowered the crane hook and hauled him up with difficulty. He was alive, but barely. Salt water burned his eyes raw. His lips were cracked. He clutched something in his fist. A handheld GPS unit. She dragged him inside and wrapped him in blankets. After an hour, he spoke. It wasn't on any map, he rasped. What wasn't? She asked. The light. Isla's stomach tightened. You're at Greywake Station. He shook his head violently. No, that's not what we saw. He described sailing at night. No storms, no issues. Then they saw a lighthouse where none should have been. Not on the charts. Not in their navigation system. Its beam was wrong. Not rotating. Fixed. Watching. They tried to turn away. The sea went still. The hull scraped something massive beneath them. And then, something sounded the horn, he whispered, from below. Isla's throat went dry. Where's your crew? He stared at her. There wasn't any water when I fell. She stepped back. What? It wasn't water. he said, shaking. It was solid, like glass. The generator lights flickered. The man's GPS unit beeped weakly in his hand. She pried it loose. The coordinates displayed weren't Greywigs. They were identical, except mirrored. South instead of north. West instead of east. A location in the middle of the Pacific. Empty ocean. The man began screaming. By the time she reached him, he was staring upward, unblinking. His heart had stopped. That night, Isla saw it. Out past the fog. A beam of light. But not Greywigs. This one didn't rotate. It pulsed slowly. Once every 10 seconds. She checked her systems. Greywigs' light was functioning normally. So what was that? Through binoculars, she could barely make out a silhouette. A tower. Impossible. There was no second rock formation nearby. No platform. Nothing. Yet it stood there, perhaps half a mile away, where only open sea should be. She radioed the Coast Guard. Static answered. Then, 44.6 south, 124.1 east. The mirrored coordinates again. Her heart pounded. The sea below shimmered, not with waves, with structure, as if something vast lay just beneath the surface, refracting the moonlight. The following afternoon, the water level dropped. Not dramatically, just enough for Isla to notice the barnacle line along the rock had shifted. She checked tide charts. They showed normal levels, but the ocean around Greywake was sinking, revealing something beneath. Dark shapes, angular, architectural. Her breath caught. Foundations, not natural formations. Ruins. And at the center, another lighthouse. Submerged, identical to Greywake. As the water continued to recede unnaturally, the submerged tower became clearer. Its lantern room was intact. And inside, movement. A figure stood behind the glass. Watching her, she stumbled back from the railing. "No," she whispered. The foghorn below her feet groaned, but she hadn't triggered it. Greywake's horn sounded automatically. Then, from beneath, the second horn answered. The submerged lighthouse's light ignited, even underwater. A beam pierced the dark sea and pointed directly at Greywake. At her, the spiral staircase vibrated. A deep grinding sound rose from below the rock. The foundations of Greywake weren't attached to natural stone. They were anchored to something metallic, something that was rising. The entire rock pillar shuddered. Ela ran to the control room and grabbed the emergency flare gun. Through the window, she saw the second lighthouse emerging fully from the sea, water cascading from its sides. It was perfectly mirrored, except for one detail. Its lantern room held a figure wearing her face. Not identical. Slightly distorted. Eyes too dark. Smile too wide. The radio blared. Boundary exchange complete. A double raised hand slowly. Greywake's light flickered. The ocean surged upward, swallowing the ruins again. But this time, the submerged lighthouse continued rising, and Greywake began sinking. Floor tilting. Metal screaming. Isla sprinted up the staircase toward the lantern room as water burst through the lower windows. She reached the top just as the sea engulfed the first floor. Outside, the mirrored lighthouse now stood fully above water, and Greywake was descending into its place. Replacement. Exchange. She understood now. There had always been two. One above, one below. When conditions aligned, they switched, and whoever occupied the surface lighthouse became the anchor for the one beneath. Her double smile widened. The water climbed the glass. The generator exploded below, plunging everything into darkness. Through the rising sea, Isla saw the other lighthouse standing tall under the moon. Her double stepped out onto its balcony. Dry, safe, above, while Isla was dragged downward. As water filled the lantern room, she heard one final transmission through the submerged radio speaker. 44.6 north, 124.1 west, occupied. The ocean closed over Greywake Station. A Coast Guard vessel arrived to relieve Keeper Kavanagh. Greywake Station stood firm on its rock, light rotating normally. The door opened before they knocked. Isla greeted them calmly. She looked thinner, paler, but steady. "No issues to report," she said. "Radio interference?" one officer asked. "Just atmospheric anomalies," she replied. They didn't notice the water dripping faintly from beneath her boots. They didn't see, far below the rock, another lighthouse sinking slowly into darkness. Inside its lantern room, a woman pounded against the glass, her screams swallowed by the deep. And somewhere in the Pacific, at the mirrored coordinates, a second ocean waited patiently for the next exchange. The first time Daniel Mercer saw the ocean turn black, he thought it was just the weather. Daniel was a marine survey technician from Halifax, contracted to work aboard a private research vessel called the Ardent Gull. The ship had been chartered by a small tech company that claimed to be mapping unexplored thermal anomalies in the North Atlantic. The coordinates they were sent were far beyond regular shipping lanes, closer to the vast emptiness between Canada and Greenland. The Atlantic had always unsettled Daniel. It wasn't like the turquoise waters tourists posted online. The North Atlantic was steel gray and endless, swallowing light and sound. It was the same ocean that had swallowed the RMS Titanic, and sailors still spoke of strange currents and phantom signals drifting through its depths. There were 8 of them on board. Captain Elaine Brooks, a woman in her late 40s with sharp eyes and little patience for nonsense. Miguel Ortiz, sonar specialist. Dr. Henry Walsh, marine biologist. Sasha Petrov, data engineer. 2 deckhands and Daniel. The job seemed simple. Deploy submersible drones, scan the ocean floor, retrieve data, leave. The first 3 days were uneventful. Fog clung to the surface like a suffocating blanket. The sea was eerily calm, no waves higher than a foot. Too calm, Daniel thought. The ocean should move. It should breathe. On the 4th night, Miguel called everyone into the control room. "There's something under us," he said. The sonar screen showed a massive shape beneath the vessel. Not a whale, not a ridge. It was too symmetrical, too smooth. "How deep?" Captain Brooks asked. 4,000 meters, Miguel replied. "But it's rising." Daniel felt a prickle run down his spine. Objects didn't just rise from that depth. Not naturally. Dr. Walsh leaned closer to the display. "Could be a thermal plume distortion." "It's not distortion," Sasha whispered. "It's structure." The shape on the sonar resembled a ring, perfectly circular, miles wide. The captain ordered a drone deployment. They lowered the first submersible into the dark waters. Its camera feed flickered as it descended. The ocean swallowed the last traces of daylight within seconds. At 1,000 meters, nothing but black. At 2,000 meters, particles floating like ash in a void. At 3,500 meters, the feed glitched. "Interference?" Daniel asked. Miguel shook his head. "No storm activity, no known disturbance." At 3,900 meters, the camera caught it. A smooth metallic surface. Not rock, not coral, metal. The drone's spotlight traced the curve of something enormous. It wasn't debris, it wasn't a wreck, it was intact. And it was moving. The structure rotated slowly, displacing the surrounding water without turbulence, as if the ocean parted for it. "What is that?" whispered one of the deckhands. No one answered. Then the screen went black. "Signal lost," Sasha said. They launched the second drone. Same result. This time, just before the feed cut, the camera captured an opening along the ring, a seam. And from that seam, something emerged. At first, Daniel thought it was bioluminescent plankton. Tiny lights drifting upward. But they were too uniform, too aligned. They were ascending in a spiral, toward the surface. Miguel's voice trembled. "It's not a thermal anomaly." The ship shuddered. Not from a wave. From below. The water around the ardent gull began to ripple outward in concentric circles. The fog thickened, pressing against the deck like a living thing. Captain Brooks ordered engines full ahead. The vessel didn't move. "It's like we're anchored," one deckhand shouted. Daniel ran to the railing. The ocean had changed color. What had been gray was now an inky black, darker than oil. The surface reflected no light, not from the ship, not from the faint moon above. And then the lights appeared. Dozens of them. Glowing shapes just beneath the surface, circling the ship. Not fish. Too large. Each light was the size of a car headlamp. They moved in synchronized patterns. Sasha came up beside him. "They're forming something." The lights aligned, forming a perfect circle around the ship. Miguel burst onto the deck. "The sonar is picking up hundreds of objects around us. They're not biological signatures." The water began to hum. It was a low, resonant vibration that Daniel felt in his teeth more than heard. The metal rail beneath his hands buzzed. One of the lights surged upward. A shape breached the surface. It wasn't solid like a whale. It was fluid and shifting, like water holding its own form. A column of black liquid rising 10 feet above the sea. Within it, lights pulsed, like veins. The deckhands screamed and stumbled backward. The column tilted toward the ship, stopping just short of touching the hull. Daniel locked eyes with one of the lights inside it. And in that moment, he felt something. Not a sound, not a voice, a thought. A question. "Why are you here?" His knees buckled. The vibration intensified. More columns rose around the vessel, each one swaying gently as if observing. Dr. Walsh shouted from the doorway. "They're reacting to us!" Captain Brooks grabbed the radio, calling for emergency assistance, but static filled the airwaves. Daniel forced himself to stand. The thought came again, stronger. You opened the seam. The drones. The structure below. They had disturbed something. Miguel's voice cracked. "The ring is at 2,000 meters now. It's coming up." The sea began to swirl. A massive circular current formed beneath the ship, dragging it downward inch by inch. "We need to cut engines and power down everything," Sasha yelled. Captain Brooks hesitated. "Now." The engines were killed. Lights shut off. The vessel plunged into darkness, illuminated only by the eerie glow of the surrounding shapes. The humming softened. The columns paused. The downward pull stopped. Everyone stood frozen, breathing hard. Daniel realized something horrifying. They weren't attacking. They were assessing. One of the columns lowered until its tip brushed the hull. The metal sizzled but did not melt. Instead, the surface of the column rippled, and the light within it pulsed brighter. Images flooded Daniel's mind. Vast cities beneath the ocean floor. Structures older than any human civilization. A ring, one of many, embedded in the abyss. Watching. Waiting. Human ships passing above for centuries, unnoticed. Until now. The thought returned. Surface dwellers break boundaries. The column withdrew. The lights beneath the water began to descend, spiraling back into the depths. The sea slowly regained its gray color. The fog thinned. Miguel rushed below. The structure is descending. 4,000 meters. 5. It was retreating. Within minutes, the ocean was still again, as if nothing had happened. Captain Brooks ordered immediate return to port. No data collection, no further scans. No one argued. They reached shore 3 days later. The company funding the expedition demanded the data. Sasha claimed the drives had corrupted during a systems failure. Miguel quit the next day. Dr. Walsh refused to speak about the event, calling it equipment malfunction. Daniel knew better. He couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the lights beneath the water. Weeks later, alone in his apartment, he opened his laptop. He shouldn't have, but he needed to know. He accessed the sonar logs Miguel had secretly copied. There, buried in corrupted files, was one final reading taken just before they powered down. The ring wasn't alone. There were dozens of identical structures mapped across the Atlantic basin. And not just there. Coordinates appeared in the Pacific, the Indian Ocean, even beneath the Arctic ice. Daniel's breath caught. Humanity had always feared what lay in the deep. Stories of monsters, of ancient sea gods, of cursed ships like the Mary Celeste found abandoned without explanation. But the truth was worse. The ocean didn't belong to humanity. It never had. His screen flickered. For a split second, a spiral pattern of lights filled the display. Then text appeared. Boundary observed. Daniel slammed the laptop shut. The power in his apartment went out. Outside, far beyond the coastline, the ocean was calm. Too calm. And deep beneath the surface, something ancient turned its attention upward once more.